This Friday, a strong earthquake with a magnitude of 7.7 hit central Myanmar hard, and aftershocks continued, causing serious damage and disaster. This rare earthquake not only caused heavy losses in Myanmar, but also spread to Bangkok, the capital of Thailand, hundreds of kilometers away, causing panic. This natural disaster that shocked Southeast Asia not only claimed dozens of innocent lives, but also brought a heavy blow to this war-torn country. Background of the earthquake. Myanmar is located at the intersection of the Pacific Rim and the Indian Ocean seismic belts, and is one of the most prone to earthquakes in the world. This land has experienced several strong earthquakes of magnitude 7 or above, causing huge casualties and property losses. In 2023, Myanmar suffered a 7.0 magnitude earthquake, which dealt a heavy blow to the country's infrastructure and social order. However, the destructive power of this 7.7 magnitude earthquake is far beyond people's imagination. According to data from the United States Geological Survey, the epicenter of the earthquake was located in the Bago region in central Myanmar, only 17 kilometers away from Mandalay, Myanmar's second largest city. At the same time, the focal depth is only 10 kilometers, which is a relatively shallow earthquake, which means that the energy released by this earthquake is concentrated on the surface and is more destructive, radiating from the epicenter to the surrounding areas. The seismic waves have brought serious destruction to large areas of Myanmar and Thailand. Geological environment of Myanmar and Thailand. Myanmar is located on the collision zone between the Indian Plate and the Eurasian Plate, and its geological structure is very complex. There are many large active faults in the country, such as the Sagan Fault and the Chan Fault, which have long been earthquake-prone areas. Most of Thailand is located in hilly and plain areas with relatively stable geological structures, but also includes some active faults, such as the Chao Phraya Fault Zone. Specifically, the occurrence of this 7.7 magnitude earthquake was mainly due to the sudden and violent displacement of the Sagan Fault in Myanmar. This large active fault that runs through the entire central Myanmar from south to north finally erupted in strong seismic movement under long-term stress accumulation. From a perspective of the source mechanism, this earthquake was mainly caused by the strike-slip movement of the fault, and a large number of cracks and tears appeared on the surface. At around 12:50 p.m., a huge rumble sounded in the Sagan region of central Myanmar, and then the ground shook violently, and the tremors spread in all directions. The latest data from a U.S. Geological Survey shows that the magnitude of the earthquake was as high as 7.7, located about 17 kilometers north of Mandalay, Myanmar's second largest city, and the focal depth was only 10 kilometers. This shallow earthquake means that the impact force on the surface is particularly strong, and the destructiveness is greatly increased. Spreading outward from the epicenter, this strong earthquake has an extremely wide range. In Bangkok, the capital of Thailand, hundreds of kilometers away from the epicenter, high-rise buildings also shook violently, and residents suddenly fell into panic. According to witnesses, they felt the ground shaking constantly, the ceiling was clattering, and the glass windows also made a creepy sound. Many people immediately rushed out of the building and rushed to the square to seek shelter. Bangkok's earthquake felt far more than that. A 30-story building under construction suddenly cracked in a strong tremor, and then the whole building collapsed and turned into ruins. Passers-by who witnessed this thrilling scene screamed and fled the scene in panic. Thai Defense Minister Pontam Wijayacha revealed that the building collapse caused at least 3 deaths and 90 missing, and rescue work is underway. In addition to Bangkok, the earthquake was felt throughout Thailand. Residents of Chiang Mai in the north also ran outdoors to avoid possible aftershocks. A local resident said, "I was sleeping at home and suddenly felt the ground shaking violently. I ran out in fear. This is the strongest earthquake I have ever encountered in my life." At the same time, the tremors in Myanmar were also extremely strong. According to local media reports, Mandalay City and the capital Naypyidaw suffered serious damage. Some historical buildings, such as the Mandalay Palace and Buddhist temples, collapsed and were damaged. An eyewitness said sadly, I witnessed a 5-story building collapse with rubble everywhere. I couldn't contact my family, and the mobile phone signal was interrupted. It was terrible. Soon after the earthquake, the U.S. Geological Survey detected another strong aftershock of magnitude 6.4, with the epicenter in the same area. This strong aftershock triggered a new round of house collapse and road damage, bringing greater panic to the people who fled in panic. According to the news released by the Myanmar military government, many regions across the country urgently declared an outbreak state to deal with this rare major earthquake disaster. The epicenter of the earthquake was located in the Sagan area in central Myanmar, only 17 kilometers away from Mandalay, Myanmar's second largest city. This ancient city, with a population of 1.5 million, suffered a devastating blow in just a few minutes. Witnesses witnessed many historical buildings collapse and homes razed to the ground. A local resident said sadly, "The whole city of Mandalay has been severely affected. There are damaged buildings and roads everywhere. We can't contact our relatives at all. The rescue forces and hospitals are overwhelmed." The Mandalay Palace, a prestigious historical site, was not spared. According to Myanmar media reports, large areas of the outer walls and buildings of this royal palace built in the 19th century were severely damaged, and many buildings collapsed directly to the ground. It is heartbreaking that precious cultural heritage was reduced to ruins in an instant. At the same time as Mandalay was hit, Myanmar's capital Naypyidaw also suffered heavy damage. This new capital built by the military government in 2005 was originally the political, economic, and cultural center of Myanmar. However, after the earthquake, many government agencies and religious sites in Naypyidaw were damaged to varying degrees. The outer walls of some important buildings showed serious cracks, and part of the roof collapsed. In addition to Mandalay and Naypyidaw, the 7.7 magnitude earthquake also caused more extensive damage. According to preliminary statistics from the Myanmar government, residential, road, bridge, and other infrastructure in Sagan, Curly River Valley, Shan State, and other areas have been severely damaged. A 90-year-old bridge completely collapsed in the earthquake, and many roads also had large areas of cracks and collapse. In the face of disasters, casualties are undoubtedly the most distressing. According to the news released by the Myanmar military government, 20 injured people have died in a large hospital in Naypyidaw. In Mandalay and other disaster areas, many injured are waiting for rescue. A hospital staff member said helplessly, "The hospital is full. We are doing our best to treat the injured, but there is a serious shortage of manpower and resources." Although the epicenter of the earthquake was located in Myanmar hundreds of kilometers away, its strong tremor still brought a serious impact to Bangkok, the capital of Thailand. This metropolis with a population of more than 17 million fell into chaos and panic in just a few minutes. The most shocking scene was the collapse of a 30-story building under construction in Chapchak district, Bangkok. The skyscraper, which was to be used as a government audit office building, suddenly broke and collapsed under the violent shaking of the earthquake, turning into a ruin. According to Thai Defense Minister Pontam Wijayacha, at least 3 people were killed in the building collapse, another 90 people were missing, and dozens of people were still trapped under the ruins. This building collapse alone cast a shadow over Bangkok and its surrounding areas. People who witnessed the scene were terrified and fled the scene. A passerby lamented, "I witnessed how the entire building collapsed completely in a few seconds. It was terrible. I am worried that more people are trapped inside." In addition to this building, other high-rise buildings in Bangkok were not spared. According to local government statistics, at least 169 buildings in the city have been damaged to varying degrees, and some buildings have even shown obvious cracks and tilts. A lawyer, Wernit Therawat, recalled, "My office building shook so badly that we had to evacuate urgently and walk down the 12th floor to get outside safely. There has never been an earthquake like this in Bangkok." As the news spread, Bangkok residents fell into panic. A large number of people flocked to the streets and parks to seek refuge, and some even fled in their pajamas with their families. Paul Vincent, a British tourist, said, I was in a bar on the street, and suddenly I saw water spraying from the upstairs. Everyone ran out in a panic, and there were cries and shouts on the scene. The Bangkok municipal authorities also responded quickly. Mayor Chachat Sitthapong ordered the city to enter a state of disaster, temporarily closed public transportation such as the subway and light rail, and organized evacuation and rescue operations. However, due to the severe congestion caused by the earthquake, coupled with power outages and communication interruptions, the rescue operation was greatly hindered. Just as Bangkok was in chaos, Chiang Mai in northern Thailand also felt strong tremors. This famous tourist city once lost power throughout the city, and citizens rushed outdoors to take shelter. Sai, a local resident, said, "I was sleeping at home, and suddenly I felt the whole house shaking, which scared me, and I ran out quickly. This is the strongest earthquake I have ever encountered in my life." Myanmar, which has suffered such severe damage, faces arduous rescue and reconstruction tasks. The key issue is that Myanmar is currently in the turmoil of a long-term civil war, and the military government's control over the people is extremely strict, which has brought many obstacles to the rescue and subsequent recovery of the disaster area. Since launching a coup in 2021, the Myanmar military government has been highly vigilant against external supervision and assistance. After the earthquake, although the military government rarely issued an appeal for international rescue, it still maintained a high degree of vigilance. Military government spokesman Zaman Tun publicly expressed the hope that the international community will provide humanitarian assistance as soon as possible, but also emphasized the need to ensure that the aid is truly delivered to those in need. This implies the military government's concerns about external intervention. At the same time, transportation and material supply in the earthquake-stricken areas were severely obstructed, which brought a heavy burden to the rescue work. Many major roads and bridges were damaged in the earthquake, making it difficult for rescue vehicles to quickly reach the disaster area. In addition, Myanmar's long-standing power supply and communication outages have made it extremely difficult to mobilize medical rescue forces. A Red Cross staff member said helplessly, "We are doing our best, but we are troubled by power outages and network outages, making it difficult to quickly assess the disaster and dispatch rescue resources." The shortage of medical resources has made the situation even worse. It is reported that the wounded at Naypyidaw General Hospital are already full, and the medical staff are overwhelmed. The situation in hospitals in other disaster areas, such as Mandalay, is not much better, and many wounded can only receive simple treatment outdoors. A doctor said helplessly, "We really don't have enough manpower and equipment, and hope to get support from the outside as soon as possible." These difficulties have undoubtedly greatly delayed the rescue process. At the same time, Myanmar's complex political environment has also brought uncertainty to post-disaster reconstruction. The military government's repressive behavior has been condemned by the international community, and many opposition forces are also continuing to fight against the regime. In this case, even if foreign aid is obtained, whether it can truly benefit the people in the disaster area may still be uncertain. A representative from the Myanmar opposition said worriedly, "We call on the international community to lend a hand, but at the same time we must ensure that the aid is distributed fairly." The military government has long used humanitarian resources to strengthen its rule, and we cannot let this happen again. Although Myanmar and Thailand are located in earthquake-prone areas, the 7.7 magnitude earthquake still caught the two countries off guard. In fact, the two countries do have serious shortcomings in their ability to monitor and warn of earthquakes. According to expert analysis, there are many large active faults in Myanmar, which has long been a high-risk area for earthquakes and has experienced many strong earthquakes of magnitude 7 or above. However, the Myanmar government has always invested less in the construction of earthquake monitoring and early warning systems, and many old seismic instruments even have the risk of failure. What is more worrying is that the Myanmar military government also lacks sufficient experience and plans in dealing with earthquake disasters. The situation in Thailand is not optimistic either. Although the geology in most parts of Thailand is relatively stable, There are also some active fault zones that are very likely to cause strong earthquakes. However, the Thai government also pays insufficient attention to disaster reduction. The earthquake-resistant design standards of some large cities are not perfect, and there are many loopholes in emergency plans. A Bangkok construction expert lamented, "Looking at the damage this earthquake has caused to Bangkok, we really need to re-examine the city's earthquake resistance." In addition to the shortcomings at the government level, the public's earthquake prevention awareness is generally weak. Whether in Myanmar or Thailand, most residents lack the necessary earthquake risk avoidance knowledge and skills in normal times. After this strong earthquake, many people instinctively made wrong escape reactions, which increased the risk of casualties. A Bangkok citizen said, frankly, "We have never experienced such a strong earthquake and don't know how to save ourselves." The government should strengthen earthquake disaster prevention education for the public. In summary, this earthquake has undoubtedly sounded the alarm for disaster prevention and mitigation work in Myanmar and Thailand. The government needs to significantly improve earthquake monitoring and early warning capabilities and improve earthquake-resistant design standards and emergency plans. At the same time, it is also necessary to strengthen earthquake prevention education for the public and improve people's awareness of self-rescue and mutual rescue. Only by fundamentally strengthening the disaster prevention and mitigation system can the two countries better cope with possible earthquake disasters in the future. When an earthquake occurs, how to avoid danger and escape in a timely and effective manner is the key to protecting life safety. First of all, when an earthquake occurs, the most important thing is to be able to find safe cover quickly. Experts suggest that if you're indoors, you should immediately hide under a table, in a corner, or under furniture with a solid structure. These locations are safer and can avoid being hit by collapsed objects to the greatest extent. It is important to note that you should not stand near windows or objects that may collapse, as it is extremely dangerous there. At the same time, people should stay away from power switches and flammable and explosive items to reduce the risk of secondary disasters. Secondly, once an earthquake occurs, people should not blindly choose to escape. Experts point out that when an earthquake occurs indoors, it is not recommended to escape from the house immediately unless there is an imminent danger, such as a fire. Because once you rush out of the house, it is easy to be hit by a collapsed building or injured by falling objects. It is particularly important that if you take an escape action, you should choose to stay away from dangerous areas that may collapse, such as high-rise buildings and electric poles. Escape along the outer wall of the building, and try to stay away from windows. In addition, you should keep a low profile when escaping and avoid standing or running during an earthquake, which can reduce the risk of being hit. In addition, after the earthquake, people should pay special attention to possible secondary disasters. First of all, we should stay away from areas prone to secondary disasters, such as landslides, dammed lakes, and dam bursts. At the same time, we should also be alert to possible secondary disasters such as fires, power outages, and pipeline ruptures, cut off power and gas, stay away from flammable and explosive items, and try to stay away from high voltage lines and buildings that are prone to collapse. It cannot be ignored that after an earthquake, roads may be interrupted, and people should pay special attention when escaping to avoid being confined to the disaster area. It is worth mentioning that for people who are outdoors, the risk avoidance measures when an earthquake occurs are also different. Experts suggest that you should stay away from buildings, electric poles, street lights, etc. that may collapse. Find open spaces and stay away from tall buildings and dangerous facilities. In addition, if an earthquake occurs while driving, stop the car immediately and stay away from the road to avoid being hit by collapsed buildings or falling objects. It is particularly important that after an earthquake, people should quickly move to a safe shelter, such as a designated emergency shelter. At the same time, we must maintain communication, pay attention to various emergency information released by the government, and cooperate with the work of rescue forces. What is more noteworthy is that during the disaster recovery phase, people should pay attention to the hygiene of drinking water and food to prevent the occurrence of epidemics.